This war in Ukraine is strangling the entire world right now, including this country. As the strain on energy supplies across the globe builds, the cost of manufacturing and transporting a vast majority of goods is skyrocketing. And we thought supply chains were stretched because of COVID-19. It's been massively compounded by Putin's senseless war. But a series of events in the past 24 hours may be an indication that this deadly quagmire could be drawing to a close. As I covered on the show here last night, the Russian President Vladimir Putin addressed his nation for the first time since the invasion. Now, that in itself is a sign of desperation. Why now? Well, because he knows that his war-weary soldiers have failed. Ukraine has retaken thousands of square kilometres of territory. And the word on the street in Moscow is that Russia is being humiliated. So there was Putin announcing a partial military mobilisation, so hundreds of thousands of citizens to be called up to face likely death, a recruitment of amateur reservists, a series of referendums in Russian-held Ukraine regions, which is just unworkable, and threats of nuclear retaliation.
If there is a threat to the territorial integrity of our country and for protecting our people, we will certainly use all the means available to us. And I'm not bluffing. Russian citizens can be certain that the territorial integrity of our motherland, our freedom and independence shall be secured. I shall stress by all means available to us.
Now, I'm here to tell you that, thankfully, Russians did not buy this so-called threat that Russia faces from the West about territorial takeover or integrity. The sum total of that desperate address, coupled with his most aggressive nuclear threat yet, may have put the final nail in the coffin of Vladimir Putin's reign and hopefully this war. Russians clearly don't have the stomach for Putin's suicidal orders and clearly don't believe what he's saying. Tens of thousands rushed for the exits and took to the streets. Airline tickets out of the country sold out within hours. Bus stops and train stations were packed with people trying to find a route out. Now, demonstrators have taken to the streets in dozens of cities. Now, Associated Press reported today that protesters in Moscow chanted "No to war" and "Life to our children." In St. Petersburg, protesters chanted "No mobilisation." Russian human rights group OVD Info says more than 1,300 Russians were arrested in anti-war demonstrations in 38 cities. This is how far the mistrust has travelled. Putin has a nationwide mutiny on his hands, and it's about time too. And then overnight, Beijing did what I would think was the unthinkable. Less than a week after Putin and Xi Jinping met in Uzbekistan, China too indicated that it had had enough. China's foreign ministry spokesman, Wang Wenbin, called for a ceasefire. He said, "We call on the relevant parties to realise a ceasefire through dialogue and consultation and find a solution that accommodates the legitimate security concerns of all parties as soon as possible." This is China speaking. They never get involved in other people's wars. Wang showed no signs of siding with Russia either. He said China maintains that the sovereign and territorial integrity of all countries should be respected. The purposes and principles of the UN Charter should be abided by. The legitimate security concerns of all countries should be taken seriously. Now, if that is code for we support Russia's fears that their territory might be taken, that is ridiculous, but I don't read it that way. I think that's code for we no longer back this war. He has breached the sovereignty of Ukraine for long enough, and this must end. This from the superpower, as I say, which very, very rarely takes sides in any war, or even comments. Meanwhile, the US president is building pressure on the United Nations, almost sensing that the end is nigh.
Russia has shamelessly violated the core tenets of the United Nations Charter. No more important than the clear prohibition against countries taking the territory of their neighbor by force.
Now, I'm not sure the presence of Joe Biden talking to the General Assembly means anything, because the United Nations won't take the lead on removing Putin, no matter what he does in contravention of various assignments. There seems to be way too many Putin co-conspirators in that organisation. But it does send a message to the world, to the people of the world, and it builds pressure. Our own Penny Wong responded to Putin's address as well. The Foreign Minister said Putin's claims of a threat to Russia's territorial integrity, which he's holding on to try and convince his people not to desert him, she said they were blatantly false.
These threats are unthinkable and they are irresponsible. His claims of defending Russia's territorial integrity are untrue. No sham referendum will make them true. Russia alone is responsible for this illegal and immoral war, and peace must first lie with Russia withdrawing.
So forget about the United Nations. It's great that the West is saying what they're saying about Putin. It's great that the narrative is now firmly putting pressure on Russia. But it's what's happening inside Russia today that will have Putin's opponents inside the Kremlin strategising a possible departure. Online, the anger and criticism is palpable. Now, on the homepage of St. Petersburg's Pulkovo airport, hackers wrote the following: "The crazy old man is going all in. His bets are our lives. They promised us to take Kiev in 3 days. The Ukrainians took 3 hours, what we took in 3 months. Now there is a mobilisation for fresh meat in order to bomb civilian sites. Ukraine already won. The question is how badly we'll lose." Wow. Ukraine President Vladimir Zelensky has his eyes firmly fixed on punishment for this so-called crazy old man.
Mankind and international law are stronger than one terrorist state. Russia will be forced to end this war.
Now, let's hope, let's pray that this truly is the beginning of the end. With Russians fleeing and protesting, as is continuing at the moment, China unbelievably opposing their so-called ally, and the world desperate for economic relief, Putin's days seem numbered. But as he becomes further isolated from within his own regime, those threats to take a nuclear option remains humanity's greatest fear. Given the atrocities committed within Ukraine under Putin's leadership, nothing is beyond this evil tyrant.